defensive security, as you can see, is a proactive and a reactive approach to safeguarding digital assets from cyber threats, right? It includes effort to prevent, detect, respond, and recover from security incidents, right? Now, again, defensive security could encompass any of this, security operations, incident response, cyber defense. Some call defensive security teams, they call them blue teams as well. Whereas the offensive security, which is sort of the other side of security that does more in terms of, uh, getting permissions to try to, compromise or take over systems in an authorized and controlled fashion, right? Those are called offensive security, and they're also called the red team, right? But yeah, defensive security, as you can see, goes by many names. I like to look at it this way, that security operations is basically the same as defensive security. Then incident response and cyber defense are sort of components that make up a good, well-experienced defensive security expert, right? Security operations is the management and monitoring of security systems and processes, and incident response is more the activities undertaken to handle a security breach or attack. Cyber defense, on the other hand, is more the proactive measures that that is taken by an organization to protect their systems and networks from attacks, right? So again, just to point out just the slight differences there. In cyber defense, you're more thinking, how do I stay proactive, on a proactive path to prevent things from even happening in the first place. Incident response, you are more like, something has happened, how do I contain it? How do I stop it from going out of control? How do I stop it from becoming something major, right? So again, security operations embodies all that. And another not so, well, that I won't really mention in this call is also the vulnerability management, but I will touch on it as we move on. Some few definitions that I would also want to touch on. What is an asset? Just something that needs to be protected. It could be people, it could be data, or information, anything that is of value to an organization. That's an asset, right? What's a threat? It's a potential occurrence of an unwanted outcome. A threat actor is basically somebody that can act on a threat, right? Or something that can act on a threat, basically. Vulnerabilities, weakness or absence of a safeguard. And when it comes to security, you want to think of risk as when a threat is able to exploit that vulnerability. So basically, when there's an unwanted outcome, which is maybe in form of a threat actor, and there's also a weakness, and both of them cross together, then you have a risk that's been exploited, right? So also think of things like safeguards, controls. All these are just things that you put in place to either reduce, avoid, or deny entirely the opportunity for a vulnerability to be exploited. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so the NIST cybersecurity framework, right? The NIST is a governmental organization that deals with setting standards, right? And they came up with the cybersecurity framework, so about almost a decade and a half ago, and they revised it recently to what it is currently, right? The only difference is, the govern piece that was added in the center, right? So basically, this applies to all domains of cybersecurity, from a defensive approach to offensive approach to more, just a risk management approach, you want to be able to, identify what your assets are and the risks that exist in your environment, right? Vulnerabilities and threats, you want to be able to identify them, right? And, when it comes to protect, once you're able to identify all these things, you want to put in measures to protect those systems and data, right? You want to put in things like firewall, intrusion detection systems, access control systems, etc., to ensure that these things that are important to that organization are kept safe, right? Then we move on to detect. Protect would only take you that far. Threat actors are also they're also on their grind, so to speak. They are looking for ways to get past your protections. If they get past your protections, are you able to at least detect them? At the very least, you should be able to detect them. But again, there's still a layer after that. So detection just means being able to identify when security events have happened, right? And things that your protection was unable to stop, you're at least able to see and take action, right? And you're not sort of blind to a threat actor making it past the protect and detect phase, right? Respond means when such security alerts are triggered, right, you are able to take action and, contain and handle, right? Then, of course, there's the recover. How do you get the system back to what it was or what it should be? With governance, governance is basically all practices supporting and defining the security efforts of an organization, right? If you put all these measures in place, you need to still have a way to check if they're effective and if it's relevant, right? So just to, again, dive a little bit more into the NIST cybersecurity framework, right? Like we mentioned, identify asset management, we want to risk assess, protect, we want to put things in place to stop at least the most likely attacks from happening, right? So you're thinking access control, you want to security awareness and training, you want to teach your users how to secure themselves, how to spot that phishing email and all that stuff, right? Detect, of course, if all this fails, are you able to still see that something has happened, right? And respond is you want to move fast and do and contain such an intrusion before it gets out of hand, or even after it gets out of hand, to be honest. Then recover, of course, getting things back to normal in case um, you know a risk has been exploited. So from a threat actor perspective, right, like I mentioned, they don't really care if you're able to identify your stuff or not. They just want to get past your protect and detect, right? They want to find exploitable vulnerabilities and evade detection, delay your response if possible. And again, they don't care about your recovery. They just want to get to the crown jewels, which could be some system with financially sensitive data or personally identifiable information. They want to encrypt all your systems, so you have to pay them. And this leads us into the breach patterns, right? So according to the Verizon data breach incident report for 2024, right? If you look at the social engineering, which will, just think about phishing, sending phishing emails, it seemed to go down in 2022, 2023, then shot up again. System intrusion has seen a fairly steady growth, right? And again, you may wonder what is the difference between both, right? System intrusion is more about unauthorized access to systems, either intentionally or unintentionally, facilitated, right? And that brings us to vulnerability exploitation, right? So I want you to think of any organization, even if you're in school or anything, there is a separation between your um, your internal system, your intranet, and the external system, which is the internet, right? If a system intrusion occurs on that separation, we call them edge devices. Think firewalls, gateways, load balancers, what have you. Stuff that sort of helps shield from the craziness of the actual internet, then that's a system intrusion, right? Most organizations can keep a lot of things behind that barrier that sort of shields them. However, the device that is doing the shielding is a prime target for people that just want to get in, right? So, and with that, we're just going to get into a short demo, which I will probably zoom through just to save time, but I'll explain it as we move on. Okay, so note that there are newer uh, edge devices that are exploitable, but I chose one from 2022 for a good reason. So the first demo is going to be on vulnerability exploitation. Again, I think it has some weird sound. Again, I'll probably, let me mute that. So this is a Fortinet makes, they make firewalls. That's their bread and butter, right? In this case, they have somebody set up that firewall on the internet to protect the organization, right? And in the first screen, the person was trying to log in. Of course, they couldn't log in because it was password protected, right? So a vulnerability was discovered about how they sort of authenticate users into the platform, right? And typically, there's typically two ways that vulnerability is discovered. It's either discovered by security researchers or discovered by the bad guys. Typically, if it's discovered by the bad guys, it gets monetized. It could be sold to espionage actors, right? So think of, say, well-funded military, adversarial groups, like, maybe like the Chinese espionage groups, the Russian espionage groups, North Korean espionage groups, right? If, say, a bad guy finds a vulnerability like this, they could sell it to them for millions of dollars, right? Because the way vulnerabilities work is the more unknown it is, the more valuable it is, right? So once this is purchased, the threat actors just stealthily, hack into or compromise said network or said device and just quietly go about their business. So, to either learn about the organization, steal their trade secrets, move data in and out of the organization without them knowing, right? And after a while, these vulnerabilities become public. As soon as they become public, they call them zero-day vulnerabilities. And in this particular case, right, all this person had to do was just go on Google and search for that particular vulnerability, and they found the POC, which is proof of concept, on GitHub. And you can see it just says, oh, these are the steps you need to take, run this code, and direct it to a specific service, right? Now, again, you may be wondering, there's so many devices on the internet, how do you find this type of vulnerable devices? Well, there is something called Showdown, which is super effective. It scans everything on the internet, basically. And if I say, oh, everybody is using let's just say TP-Link routers, and there's a new vulnerability for it. Show me all devices on the internet that are this TP-Link routers. Find it quickly. And anybody that hasn't patched their vulnerability basically be open to exploitation. So as you can see, this person ran this POC, and they set a custom password and username, and boom, they're in. Again, this is a preferred method by well-funded groups, espionage actors. And again, these have yielded a lot of results, and this is currently the highest trending method that which threat actors use to, at least presently, to get access into networks. Because again, they don't have to send you an email, they don't have to hope that you click. They don't even need to worry about you detecting them, because they are coming from a place where you never even knew. It's like having a bouncer at the gate, and somebody just digs a tunnel under the gate, right? You may think you have your defenses secure, but there's already a loophole being exploited. So the next okay. The next demo is not much of a demo. I'm just gonna throw up some screenshots, right? Because again, we are probably all familiar with phishing, but still probably the most effective and low skill way to compromise, right? Now, note that there's tons of email addresses out there from previously breached organizations, or Twitter, LinkedIn, all these things that are out there. If a threat actor sends a phishing email to, I don't know, 200,000 people and 20 people click, that's a good success rate to them, right? So I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with things like this. It's like threat actors trying to take advantage of maybe something that is currently trending, right? In my lifetime, I would say I've scanned thousands of phishing emails, right, manually. And I know, for example, in this period, what I'm seeing more of is threat actors trying to say, hey, there's this, your benefits, check out your benefits package. Because again, this is the time when open enrollment happens and people get their information about their benefits, and they're more likely to click on it. So again, these guys are smart. They will try to get you where you're most likely to fall, right? Of course, we've also heard about stuff like QR code scanning, right? Where they will send you like an attachment and be like, hey, scan this code to see your bonus or something like that, right? Use your phone to scan it. People, you won't believe, but a lot of people fall for that, right? Again, don't scan every QR code you see, even if it's on TV. Unless, if possible, I always advise Google it separately and try to make sure you're going to the correct website, right? Of course, one thing that has been effective in the past has been multi-factor authentication, right? And I say this to say that, in the past, because nowadays it's not as effective, right? There's tools out there for, called AITM tools, or adversary in the middle tools, which will basically help you set up a credential theft page that would simultaneously be logging you in, at the same time that you're putting your information out there. So again, think of it this way. If I go to this weird Russian website, right, and I don't notice that is the weird Russian website, and I enter my name or my email address in here, the threat actor is also logging me into my actual account. So it's, once it gets my username and password, and you think, well, at least it doesn't have my MFA. No, it's also gonna initiate that MFA and collect it on this fake website, right? But after you put it in the fake websites, what it does is it uses on the real website and they're into your account, right? So again, there are, it's not as effective as it used to be, right? And there's been a drive by the industry to get people to adopt more phishing resistant MFA methods, right? Now, of course, the best ways to get through this is defense in depth, which means you're not just saying, oh, I've taught my users how to identify phishing emails. I can put my feet up. We are secure. No, you need to add multiple layers, right? An example is, apart from teaching your users, you want to make sure you have something scanning all the emails coming into your environment. You want to make sure you have something scanning emails as they land in the inboxes. If a user is opening an email, you want to give them prompts like, hey, are you sure you've never really interacted with this the person before, or you've never gone to this URL before? Are you sure you want to do that? Then again, web content filtering, which would mean, everything that is going through the internet, you want to still scan it and make sure, you check it against like a database of known bad websites to make sure that, the person not going to a bad website. Then apart from that, you want to have a EDR, endpoint detection and response system in place that will be able to, identify and protect if, say, something weird gets downloaded, right? You want to also have an additional layer in place. Again, I just talked about how MFA is not as effective as it used to because, again, the threat actors have figured out a way to get past it, right? You want to add an additional layer of security in there. Access policies, right? You want to say, hey, if this person is not coming from a device that we know of or from a location that we've approved, do not allow it, right? Again, these are ways to sort of inculcate like a defense in depth strategy, right? And speaking of, just more modern techniques the threat actors are using, this is a screenshot from, an info stealer, which have, been around for about a few months now, right? In this, you go to a website, and again, this would be from a phishing email. You go to a website, and we all know about the captures. So it'd be like, hey, click here to, select a fire extinguisher or something, right? Here, what it's actually doing is making you think you are actually solving a captcha. And it says, oh, okay, to complete the captcha, just go ahead and run this thing in your environment. As you can see in this screenshot, you may just assume, oh, this is just some stuff, right? What you don't know is what it's actually doing is trying to run a command that will go execute something malicious on your computer and open up a channel to the bad guy to get easy access into your computer, right? So again, these guys are constantly evolving and it's always important to keep touch with them. And yeah, again, I made a meme. So again, threat actors are motivated. It's a very financially lucrative business, right? they will do what they have to. So again, being a defensive security uh, analyst or person, you have to constantly be aware of what's happening, what trends are out there, and assessing your security policies to make sure you're well protected, or at the very least, you can detect if threat actors get past your protections. So now wanted to do a quick touch on the minor attack framework, just because we talked about being able to detect, right? Detect means something has already happened. Um, but to prevent means something is about to happen, right? And that's where the difference between IOCs and IOAs come through, right? One is more reactive, one is proactive. IOAs are proactive, IOCs are reactive, right? And this also brings me to the pyramid of pain for the IOCs, which is, as a bad guy, if you want to get hidden or if you want to hide from being detected, you can change a lot of things, right? You can change the tools you use, the network you're using, the domains you're using. But once you start moving upwards like this to, like, your routers, again, tools, or your tactics, which is what TTP stands for, those get harder significantly, right? So there's a MITRE is made to be able to detect who threat actors are, despite any type of change in name or infrastructure that they may try to put up, right? And again, it will sort of tell how a threat actor will typically move across the network. Now, again, there's a lot of options here, and I don't want to go into it, but the point is, threat actor will typically research, find a way to initially access your environment and execute something, right? Like the command we saw earlier, then try to find a way to stay in your environment undetected, right? And try to escalate privileges, which means they try to get admin access so they can do what they need to do, right? Lateral movements across the environment, move from system to system undetected, collect stuff, which is, maybe sensitive data, collect it, move it out of. Command and control means they just set up a direct link where they can sort of, send information back and forth, either controlling your computer or moving data back and forth. And again, that also brings me to exfiltration as well. So again, threat actors will pick one. Well, threat actors will typically have certain things that they specifically use in terms of the techniques and tactics, which you can easily identify from here, and sort of do a reverse to sort of find, okay, if I've seen somebody using these two techniques, right? Maybe they use phishing and they try to set up a task job. What threat actors do that? Then you start narrowing down and you try to find out what they may do next, or what that threat actors will typically does once they are able to actually get access to. Again, the best security people are able to think ahead and learn from this. Again, if we move forward, you see there's a new framework for MITRE as well, which is called MITRE Defend, which is more the opposing side of it, right? So again, think like from any um, for any team sport, for example, you have to study your opponent, right? In the attack system, is the defenders trying to study the threat actor tactics, right? For the MITRE Defend is more, now that you know about threat actor tactics, how do you use that to defend yourself, right? So again, call out certain methods that you can use to keep your environment safe, right? And it will help you identify gaps, as well as help you come up with ways to deny, disrupt, or defend your organizations. Again, I'm gonna just move through this a little bit quickly. Just a sample playbook for ransomware. We all know about ransomwares. Hopefully, none of us have ever experienced it. But again, the best security operations leaders or analysts are able to think very logically in terms of how things happen and where they need to place their defenses, right? So, for example, right, for a ransomware, you're thinking about threat actor again, and again, this is kind of linked to the MITRE thing we just looked at. They want to make initial access, and these are the ways they can do it. Um, they want to keep persistence in the environment, right? They want to take an action like stealing organizational data, destroying backups. So again, once you're able to build this logical workflow of how they think or how they would usually get to where they need to get to, then you come up with ways and to slow things down, right? If you've identified that they like to use phishing, then you're like, okay, I can train. This is 5 here, or I can do email, and I can do email domain protection. I can also use protective DNS, right? How do I stop them from stealing organizational data, for example? 3 and 10. You alert and you make sure principle of least privilege. So even if you're an admin, doesn't necessarily mean you should have access to certain systems, right? Again, that's how you want to think logically. And again, I'll try to supply some of the references to this. I'm a big reference guy, so. But anyways, from a monetization perspective, like I said, threat actors are making a killing. Well, not literally, but maybe they are. They're making a lot of money, right? And you can see, in terms of, and again, this is also from the Verizon DBIR report, 60% of this is from of how they make money is from ransomware and extortion. Pretexting is more business email compromise. That's about 25%, right? As you can see, there's some projections about how much threat actors are making, the cost of cybercrime in trillions, and that's trillions with a T of dollars, right? So, I think in 2023 it was 11.5 trillion, which is about the third highest GDP in the world. And again, if nothing is really done about it, this is where the direction it's going, right? So again, it's super important to have cyber security experts, defenders in to help make that change in the trend, right? And I was talking about the GDP stuff, right? The USA and China have the highest two GDP, followed by cybercrime, which is super scary, right? And of course, knowing that despite all this, there's still a huge workforce gap. And workforce gap is just simply the number of unfilled cybersecurity positions in the world, right? It was 4 million in 2023. Now it's 4.8 million in 2024. Of course, there's been some countries where it's been super high change year on year. But in the US, for example, in 2023 was 483K. Now it's 502K, right? And again, I guess for Canada, it's like 156,000 on-field cybersecurity positions, right? So I want to go into like a live look at.
Sorry to cut you short, Femi. I was thinking we're running out of time, and I was thinking if maybe some people have some questions at this point,
Oh
and
yes.
yeah.
So yeah, I mentioned this earlier too. Like, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A. I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah. But to quickly run through this, just want to look at the live look of carriers, right? This is specifically on cyber defense and defensive security, right? We can look at total job openings, and oh, there we go. And protection and defense, right? So we have like 206,000 currently open, right? And again, you can start to see some trends, right? These are the type of things that are being requested. So they want you to have some infrastructure experience, incident response experience, insider threat analysis, some vulnerability analysis is good as well. CompTIA security, plus definitely a good certification to have to excel in there. Right. So just to move things along, again, we already defined what security operations and defensive security is, right? And the typical roles and responsibilities would involve learning how to use a SIEM, which is security information and event management. Again, remember when we were talking about detection, this is where you detect, right? Network security monitoring, endpoint security, vulnerability management, and all that, right? And of course, a lot of people easily find a way to get their foothold into cyber careers by moving into a defensive security position, right? And that's where the feeder roles comes in. Network engineers, sysadmins, help desk specialists are able to, right? And again, the certifications, like we discussed earlier, from here still out there. Now, the entry salary range is this high, and I want to just talk about that more because in the next page, you see I did highlight some things. So in security, unfortunately, we tend to gatekeep a lot, right? Because in some careers, you can sort of get away with not being on top of your game or not knowing much. And, maybe 2 years later, you finally pick it up. But with security, that could instantly mean, uh, you know, something, like a compromise would happen. So at the very least, this 5 skills in green should be had if you want to succeed in a defensive security position, right? If you want to start setting yourself apart, then you want to have networking knowledge, you want to know how to use ticketing tools, you want to know how to threat hunt, right? If you want to really, really set yourself apart, you want to know vulnerability scanning, threat intelligence, right? Then if you want to grow while you're in there, you want to also have all these growth skills in place. Now, again, the more of this you have, the higher your entry salary range will be. And keep in mind, this is targeted at people looking to enter into a defensive cybersecurity, defensive cybersecurity position as well. So this is the end of the technical presentation piece. If there are any questions, please type them in the Q&A. I'm just gonna run through a brief review about knowledge escalators. So I know we talked about knowledge escalators at the beginning. This is just a sort of mission statement, right? To have a customer-centric, value-focused organization that helps to train clients that are looking to enter into certain industries, right? Right now, still data analytics, business analytics, then cybersecurity. And between us, we have about 50 years collective experience, right? One thing that also sets us apart from others is that you will have continued access to your tutors even after your cohort has finished, right? So, again, like I said, one of the reasons why I really was interested in this is I had mentors say, hey, I didn't know I had to do this, or nobody told me, I just learned from my, trainings institute, and they never told me how to do interviews, how to prepare my resume, how to modify it, how to really stand out. So with Knowledge Escalators, you will have continued access to help you prepare for interviews. Will also help you prepare for your certifications, right? So that's Knowledge Escalators in a nutshell. And again, cybersecurity, 4.8 million workforce gap. We definitely need more people in. And it's not all technical roles. Fortunately, there are many other ways for non-technical people to get into cybersecurity, and these are just some examples highlighted. So I am going to move on to the Q&A, but again, just always remember it's important to continue evolving as the cyber threats evolve as well. Threat actors don't treat their job as a 9 to 5. They don't take a break, right? So again, you are up against some very well motivated persons